Hi everybody, my name is Philip and I'm going to talk a little bit about gluten in flour and how we get different amounts of gluten in flour. So first off, flour is made by grinding up a grain product such as corn or wheat or rice. And because we can use many different types of things to get flour, we result in various different types of actual flour. And so in front of me, I actually have three types of flour, and I'm going to be using these I use these for my experiment today, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about them. So this is bread flour, and this is a heavier flour, and it's used primarily, as the name suggests, for making bread. And it's thicker, gives it a little bit more structure. Next, I'm going to talk about here is cake flour. And cake flour is very light, very airy, and it's made for using in cakes, as the name suggests. And it's important because it gives it structure, but it doesn't make it that hard texture like you get with your harder breads. Then, in between, we have this all-purpose flour. And like I said, it's in between the two of them, and it's a little difficult to see here, but it's not really heavy, not really soft, just kind of midway between the two. And so, a little bit about them. In flour, there's these two proteins called gliadin and glutenin. And whenever you add water to them, they form together and form what's called gluten. And so this combination forms a really long protein chain, and it's kind of like a spring. And it's very, very long, very springy. And then, so whenever you add the water to the dough, it's all kind of bundled up. And so if you let it relax, which is why you let dough rise, that's what actually allows it to get bigger without, popping, because it's got all those, from the yeast, it's got all those bubbles in there. And so your bread flour is going to allow for a firmer hold than your cake flour will. And so, because of this, it's really important to know what you want to get out of your product and what you're putting into your product. And because you do not want to get a French bread texture to a cake that you're making. That just doesn't seem right, and I don't think that would taste right, and I'm not willing to try it. So, but today, I've actually made 6 loaves of bread, and I'm going to pull them out of the oven here. And basically, I used the same identical recipe for all of them. And I made 2 of each kind of the flour I have sitting here in front of me. Or 2 using each of the kinds of flour I have here in front of me. And the results are kind of astonishing at the difference, especially between the use of the cake flour and the other 2 flours, compared to what you get in the store and stuff like that. So let me go ahead and jump in my oven here and get these out. Okay, so as you can see, there's some similarities and some differences in my bread. And the thing to note is I use the exact same amount of materials for each one of these. And this one's so much bigger than these other 2. And so what I'm going to do here is just cut it open here, just take a little slice off. Got my knife here, my cutting board, be safe. And if you look at this one here, look at it. It's kind of light, airy, not too bad, but not really heavy, but not really light. Kind of just a mix of the two. Be pretty comfortable eating it, kind of like a specialty bread that you'd go to the bakery and get. And this was made with the multi-purpose flour, and this is actually what the recipe called for. And so, but if you compare that, which it was very similar in size and shape to our bread made with our bread flour. But once you actually get into your bread flour, you can see it's a heavier bread. And you can feel the difference too, but unfortunately you're not holding the bread in your hand. But this bread is much denser, much thicker, and you can't really tell from looking at it through the camera, but I can definitely see a difference between this bread and our first bread that I showed you. It's, like I said, much thicker, and that is because I use bread flour, which gives it more structure. Lastly, Now this one is just amazes me. This one was made with cake flour, and you can see that even after I cut it, it's about 1.5 times the size of the other ones. And because of that, or that is because the cake flour in the dough was much lighter, doesn't have that thing to give it structure, but what it does have, it was easier to move around, and it got to the edges of my pan that I was cooking in, and more than the other ones did, where the other ones just kind of stayed in a ball whenever they cooked. This one released, and if you cut it open here, this very much reminds me of the type of bread that you get in the store out of the bread aisle, just in the prepackaged, already cut. It's almost identical to this bread, which surprises me because I've never made bread before, except for until this morning. And so just the difference. I mean, this one I can put my fingers into it and it comes right back. This one I can hardly get my fingers to go into it, and that's strictly because I used different types of flour in it. And that is just absolutely amazing to me. And so just know that whenever you're making something, know what you want your results to be and know what you're putting into it, and know that there is a difference between bread flour, cake flour, and all-purpose flour, and that it's that gluten that gives this bread its structure. And because of that, using different types of flour is going to result in different feelings of your bread or your cake or whatever. So with that, have a great day, and thank you very much.